Good morning, Meadowlarks, and welcome to your 5th cooking challenge. Today you're going to be making scones. You'll notice that making these scones is very similar to making the biscuits that we did on our very first cooking challenge, except we're going to be using some new tools. One of them is going to be a food processor. If you don't have a food processor, that's okay. You can still make these scones, but you're going to have a lot more work to do cutting your butter into your dough. So the first thing I want you to do is look at your recipe and do your conversions like last week of converting ounces to cups. And then we're going to meet back here and we're going to start making some scones. After you converted your ingredients, you should have noticed that you need 1.5 cups flour, 1 tablespoon plus 2 teaspoons sugar, 1 tablespoon baking powder, 4 tablespoons butter, 1/2 cup whole milk, and 1 egg. Aside from the regular supplies that you've needed for all of our baking challenges, like mixing bowls, measuring cups, measuring spoons, and things to stir your batter or your dough with, you're also going to need a prepared baking pan. And I like to put parchment paper on my baking pan, but a silk plat or just greasing the pan will also work. And the other brand new thing that you're going to want to use, if you have one, is a food processor. A food processor looks like this. It has a blade in it, so you're going to want to be really careful with this tool. But the good thing about a food processor is it only will work if all the pieces are in place and you can't get your hand in there while it's moving. So you're going to want your food processor. You're probably going to want to ask your grown-up where it is. And like I said, if you don't have a food processor, you can definitely make this recipe still. It's just going to take a lot more muscle work and cutting your butter into your dough. This tool will make your life a whole lot easier. So I hope you have one. So get out all of your supplies and your ingredients. You can see my ingredients are here, and we're going to start. Before you begin mixing your ingredients, you're going to want to set your oven to 500 degrees. And that's really hot. So it's probably the hottest temperature. I think it's the hottest temperature that we've used so far for our cooking challenges. So I'm going to set my oven to 500 degrees. And I'm going to start that so that it can preheat while I'm getting all of the ingredients mixed up. The next thing we're going to add is the butter, and we need 4 tablespoons of butter for this recipe. And I really like food processors, and I'm sure, or this food processor, and I'm sure yours is the same too, because there's a little hole right here, so I don't have to take this all apart to add the butter into my dry ingredients. All I have to do is put the butter through that top hole. And in order for it to fit and also for it to mix better, I'm not going to shove this whole chunk in there. I'm going to cut it up into some smaller pieces. So I cut my butter into 6 smaller pieces, and each of those small pieces now will fit really easily through that hole and drop right in to the bowl of the food processor. So once those are all in there, you get to pulse this 20 times. And remember when we made the biscuits, your butter was still in kind of some chunks, and even when we made the pie dough, the butter was still a little bit in chunks. This is going to be a really fine butter mixture. So you're not going to really be able to see any of the butter chunks. So I'm going to pulse it 20 times. Once I've pulsed it 20 times, it's a good time to look at your mixture to see if all of the butter bits are broken up. To get a better look at my mixture, I'm going to want to take the lid off of my food processor. I'm not going to stick my hand in there right now because of the blade, but I am going to look, and I see right there, there's a big butter chunk. And then there's a couple over here. So I'm going to put my lid back on, and I'm going to pulse this 5 more times. All right, I just pulsed the mixture 5 more times, and that feels like it's very finely ground up in there. So I am going to carefully disassemble the food processor and put the mixture into my mixing bowl. Now remember, there's a blade in there. So when you start taking things apart, it's going to be really, really important that you don't cut yourself on the blade. So I'm going to unplug my food processor and I'm going to twist the bowl off. And I'm going to carefully take out the blade. And I'm just going to pull it straight up, shake off the flour mixture off of there, and set it into my sink so that I don't accidentally cut myself on it. If I put it in my counter or in my workspace, then there's probably more of a chance that I would cut myself on it. After I take my blade out, I'm going to pour this into my mixing bowl. And I'm going to start to add the wet ingredients. In a small bowl or cup, you are going to want to add your 1/2 cup milk and your egg. And this is a measuring cup that is pretty large, so I'm going to use this to mix up my ingredients. So I need 1/2 cup whole milk, or whatever milk you have. And then I'm going to crack my egg right inside of there. And just like other times, we're going to make sure that the egg is really, really mixed up. So that it's that nice pale yellow color. Perfect. So my next step is to pour almost all of this mixture into the flour mixture. I do not want to pour all of it in. I want to pour everything except for 2 tablespoons. So if it's easier for you to take out your 2 tablespoons, then you can do that. Or you can just pour it in, leaving about that much left in your measuring cup. So I took out 2 tablespoons. Remember, this is a 1/2 tablespoon measuring device, so that's why it looked like I took out 4 spoonfuls. I did, but it's still only 2 tablespoons. So I'm going to pour this in here, and I'm going to use my fork to start mixing it up. See that a lot of the dry flour bits are no longer dry. They're starting to be incorporated into my dough. Once your dough is stuck together, then you are going to put it out onto a floured work surface. So I'm going to just sprinkle some flour onto here, and I'm going to dump my dough onto this area. I'm going to make sure to get all those bits out of the bowl. And I'm going to knead this dough 20 to 30 times. So I'm just going to start that folding and pushing, folding and pushing. All right, I've kneaded this about 25 times. I'm going to put a little bit more flour on the bottom there because it's getting a little sticky. And I'm going to put my dough into a ball shape. So once I feel like it's in a pretty nice ball shape, I'm going to flatten this to be about 1 inch thick. And if you're a person who likes to be really precise, then you can get out your ruler for this. So I'm going to get out my ruler, my kitchen ruler, so I can measure it. And you may have had a scone at a coffee shop, or maybe you've made them yourself before. And you can make scones into whatever shape you want. But today we are going to make our scones into triangle shapes. Those are often what you see at coffee shops, are triangular shaped scones. So we're going to practice doing that today. So once you have a ball, you want to flatten this ball into a 1-inch thick disc. So to do that, you're going to just want to start flattening, and I'm going to press around the edges because you kind of want the middle, you want it to be almost a little bit of a dome shape. So I'm flattening into a disc, and then I'm going to measure, and it's about 1 inch. So once you've flattened your ball into a 1-inch disc, then you're ready for the next step. It will be important that for the next step you have your baking pan handy. So I'm going to set my baking pan right here, and I'm going to get myself a sharp knife. Once you have a sharp knife, you're ready to cut your biscuits. And sometimes you can sprinkle some flour on your knife, and that will prevent some sticking. So we are going to cut this round, my 1-inch round, into 6 triangular shaped scones. So to do that, I'm going to cut the diameter, and I'm just going to do one solid cut down. And then I'm going to cut each of these into 3 scones. So 1, 2, 3. And then doing it again for this side. 1, 2, 3. And just to make sure, I'm going to measure. Yep, they're about 1 inch. If they were too thick, I could flatten them a little bit, but they're just about perfect. Once your biscuits are all cut out, you're going to put them onto your baking tray. And I've noticed in my time as a baker that if you arrange your scones closer together, kind of like this, they rise better, but you don't want them to be so close together that they will stick when they're baking. So you don't want them to be like that. You want to spread them out a little bit. But I've just noticed, maybe it's something about the heat, I'm not really sure, maybe it's all in my imagination, but I feel like when my scones are cooked a little bit closer together, particularly in like a circle shape like this, they just cook and rise a little bit better. So once your scones are arranged on your baking sheet, you are going to use your pastry brush to brush the rest of the egg and milk mixture onto the top. And just like with the biscuits, if you prefer them to be a little bit sweeter, you can sprinkle some sugar on the top. You can even experiment with these scones. Maybe you can put some brown sugar on the top of them, sugar in the raw, but any sort of sugar will provide that nice crunchy topping. When your oven's preheated and your scones are ready, you're going to want to put them into the oven and then immediately turn down your oven to 425 degrees. So I'm going to put these in the oven, close the door, and then turn the oven to 425 degrees. Once you've set your oven down to 425 degrees, you're going to want to set your timer for 10 minutes. These scones will take anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes to cook, but always check them on that lower end because you don't want them to burn. So in the 10 minutes that your scones are cooking, that's a really good time to clean up your work area. Be super careful of the blade from the food processor when you start to clean up. So just make sure that you're looking out for that. After 10 minutes, you're going to want to check your scones to see if they're starting to turn golden brown. So here are mine. They've puffed up quite a bit. They look great. I'm going to put them in there. I think I'll leave them in the oven for about 2 more minutes. All right, these look done now. They're pretty golden brown all over. The bottoms are a nice golden brown. So now is the time, just like all of the other recipes that we made, you need to let them cool on the pan for a couple of minutes, and then you're going to transfer them to a wire cooling rack. After your scones have cooled, then you're going to just want to put them for a little bit. You're just going to want to put them on a wire baking rack to cool for just a little bit longer. And as soon as you can touch them without feeling like they're too hot, they're ready to eat. And scones are really good with jam. So that's how I'm going to enjoy mine. When your scones have cooled, they're really good with a little bit of jam or honey. And just split your scone open, put some jam on it, and enjoy. Congratulations, you just made a scone.